What do you know about the origin and roots of the Igbos from Israel?
Answer. I must begin with the history of the other tripod nationalities that makes up Nigeria. First, the history of the Yorubas could be traced to the great king Oduduwa. Oduduwa was the founder of Ile-Ife, who begot the entire Yoruba nation. The Oni of Ife sits on that throne till date. The second in this order is the Fulani of Nigeria, known as the warriors and shepherds. The Fulani could trace their ancestry to a man known as Shehu Usman Danfodio. Danfodio had 7 sons who begot the 7 core northern states. The Igbos must listen carefully in order for us to trace our ancestry from where it comes. In the words of Marcus Garvey, a famous philosopher, he said that any man without the knowledge of his history and roots is like a tree without the necessary taproot. And so it is that the origin and roots of the Igbos could be traced to Israel, home of Jacob. Jacob was the father of Israel, who had 12 sons, namely Reuben and Simeon, Levi and Judah, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher, Issachar and Zebulun, Joseph and Benjamin, written in Genesis chapter 29, verses 30. The 12 sons of Jacob later became the forebearers of the 12 tribes of Israel. Gad in this order was the 7th son of Jacob, who had 7 sons, namely Ziphon and Hagi, Shuni and Ishbon, Eri, Arodi, and Areh. Go to Genesis chapter 46, verses 16. Eri, together with his 2 younger brothers, Arodi and Areh, later became the 3 ancestors of the Igbos.
Another question, sir. Can you explain why the 3 ancestors of the Igbos migrated to this place known as Eastern Nigeria, and in what year?
Yes, I can explain. Sometime in the Middle Eastern countries, famine struck for about 7 years, and the surrounding neighboring countries were forced by hunger to sojourn in Egypt. And so Jacob and his families and relations were forced to stay in Egypt. But before this, one of the sons of Jacob, known as Joseph, had been sold to slavery in Egypt by some of his brothers. Joseph later rose to be the governor general of Egypt, under a certain king, known as Pharaoh. Jacob and his sons and relations who traveled to Egypt were about 70 in number. They lived happily in Egypt until they began to suffer persecution in the hands of the Egyptians. Later, Eri, the 5th son of Gad, foresaw the persecution and wickedness of the Egyptians on the Israel. He decided to live in time. He thought that a time is coming when the Israelis in Egypt will be taken as slaves. And so, Eri left with his brother Arode and Aleri, together with his half-brother who later begot the sons and people known today as the Ijaw nation. A lot of people from the tribes of the Edomites also followed in this journey. The Edomites that followed Eri today later begot the present Edo people of Nigeria. They made their journey through Ethiopia and Sudan and landed in Aguleri around the year 1305 BC. Aguleri is the first ancestral home of the Igbos.
Another question, sir. What are the evidences that Eri and his companions first settled in Aguleri, the first ancestral home of the Igbos?
The evidences that Eri and his brothers settled in Aguleri are many. There is a house in Aguleri today built by Eri known as Obugad. That house today is a temple and the house of Eri himself. It is still located in Aguleri, known purely today as a tourist center. There is also a Trinity tree at the burial place of Eri. These trees are three, but strongly united by a single taproot. You can see them in Aguleri till date. Eri was a religious man, very strong and resourceful. He lived with his brothers so closely until they developed one culture and language identity for his descendants to come. This generation was later known today as Ndi Igbo. Later, his brother Arode and Areli dispersed to different settlements, making up the various towns of Igbo today. Eri and his companions were not dark in complexion. It is because of the hot climate here that changed their color to the present dark brown.
Another question, sir. Can you point to us, sir, some of the descendants of Eri today?
Answer. Eri, the first father of the Igbos, has about 5 sons, namely Agolo. Agolo was the ancestor of the people known today as Aguleri. The second son of Eri he named Ata. His descendants could be seen in the present Ata kingdoms of Igala in Kogi State. The third he named Oba, while the fourth he named Hebrew, in remembrance of his origin from Hebrew. The last of his sons, known as Menri, who begot the present Enri kingdom. The Igbos came to be known from the word Hebrew, the name of the first son of Eri. Eri loved his first son so dear that the name Igbo today came from the corruption of the word Hebrew, which is the name of the first son of Eri. The first son of Eri was very fiery and highly spiritual, that he was the greatest in the love of roots and herbs, which he uses for spiritual and magical purposes. His descendants today include Igbo Etiti, Igbo Adagbe, Igbo Eze, etc., what you can know today commonly as the Nsukka people of Nigeria. They fell into the states of Anambra and Enugu under state creation. Till date, the people of Nsukka are hugely feared because of their knowledge of roots and herbs for religious and spiritual purposes. Other descendants of Eri in the present Igbos include Nsukka, Enugu, Oka, Onisha and Nnewi, Ila, Abo, Wale, Ogwashukwu, Ibuzo, Asaba, Eziago, Neni, Adazi, Oko, Oreri, Nri, Mpo, Okija, Nando, Nnokwa, Achara. They later made up what you know in the Anambra state of old up to Delta, Kogi, and Enugu. It should be of note that some people of Ibagwa of Nsukka may have had their way through where you know today as Nkano, especially in Nike. That is the reason today the Nkano people sees the Nike as the eldest, known as Ndij. Till date, in every gathering of the Nkano people, the tradition of kola breaking must be presented to a Nike man.
Another question, sir. How old was Eri when he died? And how do the Igbos remember Eri till date?
Eri, the first ancestor of the Igbos, died at the age of 140 years. He was buried at Obugad in Aguleri. Obugad could be located till date, that it serves as a tourist place for the Israelites. The native people of Aguleri remember their grandfather Eri so dear. They perform annually a traditional feast in remembrance of the return of Eri. The Igbos, while describing a very long time ago, used to say Mberi or Erimbe, meaning long time ago. Aguleri is the ancient Edo kingdom, narrated in some of our Igbo folk tales of old.
Another question, sir. How true is it that Eri was a man of wealth and means?
Answer. Eri was wealthy and resourceful, almost like his great-grandfather Abraham. The wealthiness of Eri could be seen today in his descendants, that the Anambra people of Nigeria was home to the wealthiest citizens in Nigeria and beyond. Sir Louis Odumegwu Ojukwu was the first African to be a millionaire.
Another question, sir. Can you also tell us something about Arode, the younger brother to Eri, and where can we locate his descendants?
Answer. Arode was the immediate younger brother to Eri, as recorded in Genesis chapter 46, verses 16. Having lived together with his brothers, later dispersed to begot the present Arochukwu kingdom. Arode was as industrious as ever and naturally blessed with the gifts of arts and crafts. This could be shown in some of his descendants, the Abangwa people of Aba, that they were the first industrialized developed part of Nigeria and known till date as the Japan of Nigeria. The Arochukwu was famous for commerce and trading and wholly linked to the slave trade. His descendants include Nembe, Ngwa, Abakiliki, Ogoni, Afipo, Aro Ekotekpene of Akwa Ibom, Aro Echie in River State, Aro Ndizogwe in Imo State. The people of Arochukwu could be seen virtually beyond Nigeria due largely to slave trade. They had their people around America and Europe, most especially places like Cuba, where you have the Ogologal or annual festival of Cuba.
Another question, sir. What can you tell us about the last son of God known as Areli?
Answer. Areli was the last son of God and one of the ancestors of the Igbos. Go to Genesis chapter 46, verses 16. He was known to be the wisest of all. He was a man of natural wisdom and preservation. The native tongue of his descendants is today accepted academically as the central Igbo language. The descendants of Areli includes Oweri, Umuahia, Diobu, what you know as Porakot, Okigwe, Olu, Nkwere, Mbano, Elele, Mbaise, etc. Therefore within the states of Imo and Porakot. The wisdom of Areli was demonstrated and seen in one of his descendants known as Olauda Ekwano, who was a victim of slave trade to Britain. He was the first slave in history ever to buy his freedom with his money at the age of his early 20s. Olauda Ekwano hails from Ekwano in the present Umuahia. He was the founder of the first British black political movement. He fought for the liberation of the slaves everywhere around Europe, that he liberated the slaves in Britain and settled them in the present Sierra Leone. He gave them a capital known as Freetown. His other name could be known as Gustavus Vassa.
Another question, sir. Who was the first man in history ever to write in his book that the Igbos were descendants of Israel?
Answer. The first man in history ever to write that the Igbos are descendants of Israel, his name is known as Olauda Ekwano, otherwise known as Gustavus Vassa. He was a slave in Britain who later liberated other slaves and settled them in Sierra Leone. He founded the capital known as Freetown. Olauda wrote about his slave experiences in his book and autobiography known as The Interesting Narratives of Olauda Ekwano, written around 1789. He traced his origin to Ekwano somewhere in Africa. The said Ekwano is located in Umuahia till date. He was the first man in history ever to write in his first chapter of his book since the 17th century that the Igbos are descendants of Israel. Gustavus Vassa, otherwise known as Olauda Ekwano, was sold at the age of 11 years. And he was the first slave in Britain ever to buy his freedom with his money at a cost of £40.
Another question. What form of leadership system do the Igbos practice in the olden days?
Answer. Just like the Israel of old, they were ruled by elders and priests. They have no king in the olden days until God appointed Saul, who was the first king over Israel prior to David. And so it is that in the olden days, the Igbos were ruled by elders and priests and council of the people. Today one can observe that since the settlement of the first Igbo ancestors, the Igbos were ruled not by kings, but by titled men and elders and the priests of various oracles. Remember, the oracle in the olden days is a means the Igbos used to pray and consult the Almighty God, known as Chukwu. This could be observed in things fall apart. The Israelites too, in this vein, were also formerly ruled by elders and the prophets. Look at the case of Moses, who led Israel to the promised land, until God gave them a man known as Saul, who ruled over Israel prior to David. In this way, the Igbos were ruled by eminent kings known as Eze. For example, Eze A.E. Chukwuemeka Eri, the man who rules over Aguleri till date. Eze Obidie Bonyaso, the man who rules over Nri. Obi of Onisha, Ata of Igala, Jajar of Opobo, Eze Oyamaneke of Udi, Eze Wiboko of Afikpo, Chief Joseph Wobodo, who ruled over the towns of Abugo and their younger brother community, Abani, located in Nkanu today. It should be noted here that Eze Oyamaneke of Udi was the famous absolute king who ruled over Wawa kingdoms up to Afikpo and Abakaliki. He founded the Wawa capital, otherwise known as Enugu, and the mines in Udi was named after him. One of his sons, known as Justice Dadi Charles Oyama, later became the first Nigerian to be appointed a judge in the International Court of Justice, Netherlands.
The next question. What little knowledge can you dish out to us about King Jaja of Opobo?
Answer. King Jaja of Opobo was a slave boy from Amibo in the present Imo State. He was sold to slavery at the age of 12 years, around the year 1821. He died in 1891. He was the founder of Opobo Kingdom and the first African to export palm oil to Liverpool, England. His native village was Umuduroha in Amaibo. He fought against the colonial rule and thus was killed in the process in the year 1891.
Another question, sir. How peaceful was our native society, the Igbos, prior to the arrival of the European powers around the 14th to the 19th century? And how were we affected adversely by the slave trade?
Answer. The Igbos existed peacefully until the coming of the Europeans around the 16th to the 19th century. The Europeans changed the course of everything, ranging from politics to slavery to a new religion. And so it was that the slavery which occurred in Nigeria around the 15th to the 19th century claimed more than 1.7 million Igbo Jews, ranging from Calabar slave depot to the place we know today as Badagry. Slaves from many tribes in Nigeria were sold to the waiting hands of the Portuguese slave merchants, who export them to Europe and America. An unsuspecting innocent victim was taken forcefully against his will and shipped to either Calabar or Badagry, the land of no return, wherein the journey begins heading to western destinations. The slaves of Igbo origin were the hottest in demand anywhere in Nigeria, especially Calabar and Badagry, that the Europeans have to ascertain the nativity of his would-be victim with a question to the local merchants, Oyibo, Oyibo, meaning, is he, she, a slave of Igbo origin? They quickly pay in high price for the Igbo slaves, and in this way, the traders came to be referring to the white men as Oyibo people. because of that very question at Badagry and Calabar slave depot. All over Africa, the white men came to be known today as Oyibo, while the Igbos called them Ndi Oyibo.
Another question, sir. Can you point to one or two families or nations in the world where the Igbos were sold as slaves?
Answer. The Igbos were virtually sold to all the nations of Europe and America as slaves because of their brilliance and strength. This high crave and demand for slaves of Igbo origin might have been how the grandfathers of Martin Luther Jr., Michael Jackson, and Winfrey Oprah were sold to America as slaves. Also, the people of Haiti home to Wycliffe Jean could also trace their roots through the slave trade to the Igbo extraction. They had the same culture and tradition with the Igbos that they attend to their visitors first with kola nut and prayers, just like the Igbos do till date. The woman you know in America as Oprah Winfrey is the richest black woman on earth, believed to have hailed from Liberia. Remember, Liberians were made up of hugely slaves deported from America into a place known as Liberated Area, otherwise called Liberia today. The name Oprah, as pronounced by Americans today after the woman known as Winfrey Oprah, is also a name among the Igbos pronounced Opara or Opara, meaning the first son of a family. Remember, Winfrey Oprah is the world's richest black woman. There was a time in history when the slaves of Igbo origin in America gathered to drown themselves in a sea known today as Igbo Landing in America.
Another question, sir. How has the coming of European powers affected Nigeria as a nation?
Answer. The coming to Nigeria of the Portuguese slave masters has altered a lot of things for our dear country Nigeria. For example, Nigeria's largest city known as Lagos was formerly called as Eko, but was named Lagos in the year 1472 by Ruiz de Sequeira, a Portuguese slave merchant. Lagos is also the name of the oldest slave city in the world, known as Lagos City of Portugal, which have existed more than 2,000 years. Our own Lagos was adopted by the British colonial government in the year 1914 as our capital city, marking the amalgamation of Nigeria. Lagos, otherwise known as Center of Excellence, has since existed as the capital of Nigeria until 1991, when our loving and able President, General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, moved the capital from Lagos to Abuja. The colonial powers ushered in a new government with all intent and purposes to exploit Africa. Remember, the Europeans divided Africans among themselves in the Berlin Conference of 1885. In this conference, West Africa as a whole was handed over and given to Britain as our own share and property in the world. Our dear country Nigeria falls under this piece of cake for British exploit till date. This attitude gave birth to what you know as colonialization.
Another question. Who was the lady that gave the name Nigeria, and what did she have in mind when she pronounced Nigeria to his boyfriend, Lord Lugard?
Answer. The name Nigeria was believed to have been named to her by the girlfriend of Lord Lugard, known as Flora Shaw. The Nigerian people till date erroneously holds the belief that the name was gotten from the Niger River, but it is false. Actually, nigger as a word was used by Flora Shaw upon her visit to Lord Lugard, the Governor General of Nigeria. I must bring to you that nigger is an European way of showing disgust or ridicule to blacks, which to them could otherwise mean monkey or blacks. And so it was that around 1960 to 1963, our eminent fathers, such as Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Obafemi Awolowo, Tafa Balewa, and a host of others, stood their ground and fought for the independence of our dear country, Nigeria.
Again, sir, as a historian, how do you think Nigeria's independence then affected the Igbo people, otherwise known as Jews?
Answer. The independence of Nigeria, which was later followed by a lot of crises, had affected the Igbos adversely. There was crisis between the political and military ranks. This ushered in a military coup led by Major Kaduna Chukwuma Zobo. This blood-sucking coup later led to the emergence of a counter-coup led by the northern military ranks against Ironsi and the Igbos. Gowon later emerged as the nation's new military leader, and under his own clear eyes there was pogrom against the Igbos, which cost more than 45,000 lives. This ill-fated crisis led to a revolt and misunderstanding between the then federal government leader Gowon and the leader of the eastern region known as Odumegwu, and so the war ensued. The Nigerian Civil War, otherwise known as the Biafran War, led to the loss of life of the Igbos in a number of 2, if not 3 million Igbos, mostly women and children who died from starvation and hunger. I must say that the defeat of the Biafrans is an European way of total defeat against the Africans. This could be seen in the publication of a British journalist by name Richard West, who once said, after looking at the Biafran spirit of the war, that the defeat of the Biafrans is inevitably the defeat to the Africans' independence by the Europeans.
Another question. What do you know about the origin of the name Biafra?
Answer. The name Biafra was traced to a Portuguese early explorer who had come around the rivers of Ogoni known as Bight of Biafra. His name is Joao de Biafra. The word Biafra was first pronounced by Chief Frank Opubo. He hails from Ijo. Odumegwu Ojukwu later adopted that name after his new nation between 1967 to 1970.
Going back to Israel again, sir, what can you say about the life of the Igbos and the Jews?
Answer. The Jews, otherwise known as Israel, have a lot of things in common with the Igbos. Till date, the name Ada is a name among the women of Israel. It is also a name among the Igbo people till date. Ada is recorded in Genesis chapter 4, verses 19 to 20. The Igbos pronounce Yahweh in every Igbo gathering, especially of elders. Yahweh is pronounced Yah for short. Remember, Yahweh is the name to Jewish God who led the Israel out of Egypt to the promised land. Other examples, if I may say, is the discovery of the star symbol of David by archaeologists in the town of Ibuku. Of course, you know that the star symbol represents Israel. That discovery in Ibuku was later used by the government of Britain upon our penny coins used in 1952. You can also see the royal star symbol of David embedded in every object owned by the Israel, such as the Mercedes-Benz car, which was originally manufactured in Western Germany. Till date, the symbol of the star symbol of David is enclosed in every face of the Mercedes. The Igbos and the Jews have the same culture of carrying home their dead ones, recorded in Genesis chapter 49, verses 29 to 50, even in our Exodus chapter 13. For a careful look about the understanding of the nation of Israel to the Igbos could be seen in one of the publications of a leading newspaper in Israel called Haaretz Magazine, when on 12th October 2005, it declared that the Igbos are Israel through God. An Israeli ambassador to Nigeria has confirmed this. His name, known as Noah Kaz, he said that I am sure the Igbos are descendants of Jews. This report could be seen in our Daily Sun newspaper of March 28, 2004. The early missionaries are aware that the Igbos are descendants of Israel, but they were under strict warning to keep the secret by their leaders from Europe, for fear of losing the Igbos to Judaism, the religion of their forefathers Israel.
The second to the last question, sir. As an oracle of history, sir, can you remember the native currency used by the ancient Igbos of old for commerce and trade? And what history can you attach to it?
Yes, I can remember. The native money used by the Igbos of old was known as ego ayoro, or what you can know as cowries. Cowries, otherwise known as ego ayoro, was gotten in quantity in a community known as Okpogo. Okpogo is a community located in the present Eziago. Later, all over Igbos, cowries known as ego ayoro later came to be known as Okpogo till date, after Okpogo community in Eziago.
The last question, sir. Do you think that apart from the slavery of Africans to Europe, that there are no such thing as slavery today?
Answer. Apart from the slavery of Africans to Europe of old, I also think that today slavery has just begun. What we have today is official and political slavery within the continent of Africa. All over Africa, if I may say, there is official and political corruption. This could be seen among our leaders. In our own case, the Nigerians, we see the failure of every system, ranging from our educational system to the failure or inadequacy of power. Even our hospitals, a lot of things to be mentioned. Only the privileged few in Nigeria are rich, because they soiled their hands in the wealth of many. Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, the governor of Nigeria's Apex Bank, once said that Nigeria loses more than 25% of her annual budget as the cost of the running of our legislative chambers. What then is left for the poor? There is monumental and heavy looting of the resources of the people, ranging from the local government system up to the federal. The poor are only left to perish and languish. And this has given cause to what you know today as violence and robbery. The failure of Nigerian government to recognize the importance of education in northern Nigeria may have given rise to terrorism of our youth, what you know today as Boko Haram. Why not give us a better education instead of going to Ghana for our universities, even in Europe? Why not give us electricity so that we can develop our industries? Why not give us healthcare system so that our people will stop? Why not give us agriculture and infrastructure so that there will be a better life for our people? Unless the government of Nigeria wakes up to its true meaning and leadership.